Hello and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Spectrum. Every age, every need. I'm your host, Sean Francis, and I am joined by my partner in crime and thrive, my cousin Maurice McDavid.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be
And
here.
today we're going to just be talking about a variety of things from a dad's perspective. Before we get started, I want to thank our partners, Billy Footwear. They are makers of adaptive footwear, fine adaptive footwear for any and everyone. The story of the founder, Billy Price, is one that is incredible. Billy became he became paralyzed and needed to learn how to do everything for himself all over again. And he was able to do that with the exception of putting his shoes on. A prototype was built, Billy Footwear was born, and they've sold more than 1 million pairs since, impacted the lives of many people. And if you click on the link in the show notes, you will find that you will get 10% off your final purchase. We also want to encourage you to join us for our bi weekly men's group known as The Den. We have a
Yes.
conversation. It is a support group for men. I'll tell you, when I was offered an opportunity to be a part of a support group for men, and when I thought of a men's group, I thought these are guys that sit around all day trying to figure out around a campfire who can push out a beard the furthest and who has the biggest kill. That's not me. But I realized over a period of time that men are not encouraged to be open about anything about that which we are uncertain of. And if that's true with men, period, it applies 10 times more so to those of us who are caregivers. So we are going to jump right into it. Welcome to Beyond the Spectrum. All right, all right, all right, all right. So let's kind of get just right into it. Maurice and I were talking off camera. We were saying, you know, the previous show that I had was Just Two Dads, which I hosted with Brian Altooni, and we started talking about things from a dad's perspective. And it seems like you can almost never run out of that and those topics to talk about around that. But Maurice and I were saying earlier, we were saying, when you find out that you and your significant other are about to become parents, I don't know if it's different for women, but I don't think you're thinking about what it means to become a parent from a dad's perspective versus a woman's or anything like that. But over time, uh, you gain some insight and some of those things, you know, come to light. And I also think there's got to be a difference between being a parent to a um, son versus a daughter. So my son Elijah is 19, was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3, and Maurice Isaac is how old?
23. He just turned 23. He's also
23. Okay.
diagnosed at 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's enough time to have to look back upon.
Mhm.
With that in mind, tell me about what you think is dad specific to being a caregiver to one with autism or with special needs.
Hmm. Honestly, I think those lines get really quite blurred. I think traditionally, dads are doing the sports thing, and dads are the authority in the house thing, and the disciplinarians, and some of those stereotypical roles for dads. But I think for me, in my experience, having a neurodivergent child, those lines were absolutely blurred. It was just like, what does my son need? Whether that traditionally fell on the male side of the responsibilities or the female side of the responsibility, if there is such a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like, well, here's an individual that needs my care, that needs my love, that needs my support, and so can't say I went into while my wife was pregnant with Isaac, thinking about, what's my role going to be as a dad. I was just excited. Isaac is my youngest of five, so I already had a bunch of kids, and he was my youngest. And so I love being a dad. That's why we ended up at five. Um, so I was just excited and afraid to add another one to the group, because at points I felt like we were overwhelmed. But I love kids. I love being a dad. So I was
Yeah.
purely excited about it. But again, um, once his diagnosis became clear and the challenges it presented, it really did blur the lines for me about what my responsibilities were in caring for him versus my wife's. It kind of, I think, erased the lines. It's like, what does he need, how and when, and how do we as a team best support um, his best care.
Yeah, I think your situation and mine, the things that we have in common are I don't know if they're not typical because to be
Mm,
honest, you're so busy doing what you do, living as you do, you don't know what takes place with most people these days, so to
mhm,
speak, and how blurred those lines are or not for everyone else. But I know that, you know, for each of us, those lines are blurred. And so for me, working in financial services as an independent contractor, I control my schedule. And my wife, Laura, worked a 9 to 5. So I was the one that took him to therapy and had joined a mommy and me group where I was the only daddy in that group. So you're definitely not thinking about blurred lines. But the other thing that was different um, for us is Laura had 2 daughters from her previous marriage. He was our first um, child together. And in your case, Isaac was your fifth. The perspective has got to be different for someone who's having a child for the first time, too. So those things all play a role in each situation being different.
mhm.
Um, what would you what would you say? And I'm asking you this, I'm wording it carefully because if I ask a question, unless you have a situation that's completely different than my own, I ask the question
Uh-oh.
thinking of how I would answer it as well.
Mm,
um, and so I'm trying to answer it as I ask it. But what do you think are some of the things, or the first thing that comes to mind that is different or challenging for a dad to a young adult with special needs versus a mom?
um, for a dad to a son with special needs or just a child with special needs?
Both,
There-
both.
okay. What is different for a dad? Well, that kind of put me on the spot. Like, what is different? I don't know. I
I can make it easy. I can make it easy for you because
Yeah,
you know
give
what?
your
As I
answer first if you have one.
because I was I do, sometimes it's, I say this so much. There's a couple of people I quote often, and Einstein is one of them, which
Mhm,
is the saying that you can't solve a problem at the same level of consciousness at which it occurs.
mhm,
So the problem is here for those that are actually watching this episode on the YouTube channel versus hearing it. The problem is here. You have a dot, and you're at that problem because it's yours. If you're not able to step outside of that dot or circle, you don't gain perspective. And we just gave an example of how things can be complicated. We talked about how the appreciation we have for our group, the Den.
mhm,
That group was created as a result of that problem. So
mhm,
it's very common, you know. So I will go first and say that the thing that is different for a dad being a caregiver is I think the expression of any form of uncertainty, not having
mm,
the answers because society expects a man uh, to fix it, and then of course
mm,
the type of man that you are is dictated by the love language of the man that raised you. If there's a man in your life that raised you, if there's one that's absent,
mhm,
that dictates the love language too, or the
mhm.
lack thereof.
Yeah, also, and that sparks for me. And again, I may be typical, I may be atypical. I don't know. My dad uh, was there physically, but he was not really there emotionally. He he worked a lot, and when he was home, he watched television, and and I don't blame him. I have a great relationship with my dad, and I love him now. And not that I didn't love him then, but we have a great relationship now. But for many years, kind of when I became a young adult, and especially when my wife became pregnant for the first time, I'm like, I'm going to give my kids what I didn't get because I was a latchkey kid and kind of forced to be very independent and take care of myself because both my parents worked and my dad was not very emotionally available. So I kind of made this vow that my kids, I even said this, and I hope this isn't inappropriate, but other than breastfeeding, there's nothing my wife will do for my kids that I won't do for my kids. That was the one thing I realized I could not do. But the rest of it, I was going to change diapers, I was going to feed them, I was going to clean up after them, I was going to do whatever it took, so they knew they were valued and loved. And so that was a vow out of my own pain, out of my own experience that I didn't
Hmm.
want my kids to have to live through. So that probably set me up to even at times taken on more than I should have, because I
Yeah.
because I had made that commitment somewhere deep inside myself.
You know what though? I'm going to give you some grace that you. I wouldn't say you denied yourself, but I'm just going to give it to you because I don't know if you noticed the distinction. You just said you were going to. There wasn't anything that she was going to do or give that you weren't going to give as well. I forget exactly how you said it. I'll see it in the
Hmm.
playback. But you didn't imply that you can do anything that she can do. You imply that you're willing to do anything other than nursing that she does.
Hmm.
And there's one thing that that does. It displays your commitment to them,
Hmm.
to your children. It displays some commitment to her as well to give her some kind of respite.
Hmm.
But the other thing that it does is that it doesn't devalue what she's capable of uniquely doing and giving.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
That's that's pretty special.
Um, well, what I will say is I think kids are unique and special. I think kids are miracles and they're amazing. And um, I just find great value in kids. I love being around kids. They crack me up. They're true to themselves. The world hasn't beat it out of them yet. So like if I was going to do a job any other than the career I have now, I always want to kind of work at a boys and girls club and just run around with the kids and tell them they're valuable and tell them they're loved, because that's again kind of out of a pain that I think I experienced. I didn't feel particularly valued. I kind of felt often like an annoyance and a kind of an impediment to some of the things that my parents wanted to do or be or achieve. Not that they
Hmm.
didn't love me, but and I could go into lots of reasons why I love them to death and realize, they were who they were out of their own experiences. So I don't blame them in any way, but it did help shape how I was going to approach being a dad, for sure.
Yeah. But you just touched on two things, which is we'll talk about how much we love kids and kids are amazing. Kids are that. Well, the people, the adults of this earth, we're all kids, including us.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the way we say it, because they say that you should watch what you say and how you spell, because that's why they call it a spell, because your words mean things. And we tend to act as though once you're no longer a child, some of that magic is gone. And unfortunately,
Mm,
the world convinces you of that also. I made a post yesterday that I got this notion um, from something else that I saw, which was, I said, if anybody watching this post thinks that they're gonna grow up one day and be somebody, you got it all wrong. You're dead wrong,
mm,
because you already are somebody, and you probably were before you even got here. The rest of the world just doesn't know it yet, and you probably forget it.
mm,
And that was as much for me as it is anybody else. We come into this world as close to perfect as we're ever going to be, and that goes back to the other thing I often say, which is, and that's not mine. I got that from Michael Jackson of all people, which just said, we should be more childlike and less childish, because we have no bounds in our curiosity as children. That gets changed as we get older. Let's talk about the idea. You and I talked about this earlier. There's a shift from um, uh, architect to consultant, because the other thing that takes place is, you know you're building the world that your child is going to inhabit immediately anyway.
mhm,
And as they become teenagers, now you're a little bit more of, well, in most cases, with the removal of special needs, you go from architect to consultant, because you're consulting them because they have an opportunity to go out into the world on their
mhm,
own.
mhm,
And the things that they typically do is, an after school job, um, driving, doing things with their friends socially. Well, depending on the diagnosis, and that's the one thing that your son and mine share, is that that's not part of their existence. So the manner in which we become consultants is just a little different, and you're
Right.
walking a tightrope between, um, I don't want to say hope and fear, but on one hand, you're like we try to be very conscious of what we say and what we put out, and remain open to all possibilities. So rather than say he'll never do such and such, or he can't do such and such, we'll be very conscious to say he does not do this thing at this time.
Right.
And so
Right.
there's this awkward dance between objective reality and fantasy. And I know for
Mm,
some parents, you know, it's sheer fantasy where they're, you know, at one end of the spectrum, the fantasy is that they'll never do so and so, and they don't do anything outside of what they know,
mm,
or they have this unrealistic hope as to maybe what it is that they'll do, maybe put them in a dangerous situation.
mm.
Uh, what's your thought on that? And then how do you balance that dance? And does the way you do that differ from um, the way your wife Florence might approach it?
There's definitely a difference there. I think between my wife and I think that you picture the dad who takes the kid and throws them way up in the air, and he catches them and throws them way up in the air, and the mom's like, "Oh my God, don't do that." The dads are like, "It's safe. We're having fun." I think it stays like that. At least my experience is it stays like that as they get older. Is I'm a little, and this is with my son Isaac as well as the rest of my kids. I'm a little more free-handed with them. I'm more willing to let them walk on the edge and take some of those risks. And now for my adult kids, because Isaac again is my youngest, and my kids are in their 20s and early 30s, I definitely am pushing them to uh, and remind them forever. I am here to support you. I love you. I've always got your back, but I'm not the architect of your show anymore, and I don't want to be the architect of your show anymore. I don't have the energy for that, right? Um, with Isaac, of course, it's different because he doesn't have some of the tools to become completely independent. Um, but I still want him to have those opportunities to push boundaries for himself. And so there are ways that I love. Um, there's a park we go to that really is he gets on a scooter and he just goes crazy. And I let him, if you've got kids with autism, a lot of them stim and make noise. So then he's very free and he looks free. He's scooting along and he's making his noise and he's just having a blast. And for me, that is a wonderful thing. So um, it's in smaller steps, right? It's not like the rest of my kids that I want to see him um, be on his own and take on some of these challenges, and maybe interact with the public in a way where I'm not Batman on his shoulders, like you know um, preventing anything awkward or uncomfortable from happening. So I think there's a pronounced difference between how my wife approaches it and I approach it, and
Yeah,
that can cause issues between the two of us. Sometimes it's like I
it's
don't
got to,
think,
and it does.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And the reason I say that is because a couple days ago we ran into one of those situations where I was I didn't perceive the issue, and she felt it was an issue, and that caused an issue. So that's kind of the life you live, right?
It is. And it's a totally different topic, which we'll
Mm,
touch on in another episode. We
yeah,
between you, myself, and our good friend and co-host Susanna, we've talked about that, which is that is the very reason why the divorce rate in our community is so high,
right,
um, because those things take place. And
right.
Laura and I go through the same thing where I'm like just sometimes because of my lack of patience, at
Mm,
times she'll just be in protection mode about something he says or does where I don't think at the given moment it was necessary at all because
mm,
there's nothing to protect. But there's been just as many times when that is needed because I haven't been the most patient. in terms of trying to figure out what he's trying to communicate, or whatever the case might be. Um, how do you allow him to make his mistakes? I had um, a mentor in business that talked about in terms of leading people. It's like sometimes you got to let the kids, you got to let people break things. You got to let
Mhm.
them break things so that they know not what to break. You can't just have everything protected and bubble wrapped.
Mhm.
Um, and I'll answer that as I ask it, as you think about it. For me, it would be the things that he asks for. Because right now he's going through a thing where he's quick to say, need your help, need your help. And then for me, what I have to do
Mhm.
is I have to assess whether or not that's something he really needs help with.
Mhm.
And if he doesn't, or if it's something he can figure out, I'll be like, I know you got it. You can figure that out. But in terms of the good cop, bad cop,
Mhm.
if Laura's at home, what he'll do, and now I think I told you he's going through this phase where he calls us by our first name. I'll go who, he'll go daddy, and almost irritated. But if I say no, you can do it, he'll go Laura, Laura, and go, because then what he'll do is tell her that he needs help, and it
Mhm.
might be with something that he can do on his own, like even if it's picking up something and taking it downstairs or whatever, like a dish or something. Because it's one thing to ask,
Mhm.
which he'll do, but other times he'll say, "I need your help," because he's quick to do that rather than try it.
Yeah,
And if
solve
I'm
it.
no, you
Yeah.
can figure it out. You can pick it up. Like we were in the store the other day. We are at Costco, and
Mhm.
there was something we were getting out of the freezer section, and he's like, "I need your help." And I didn't get impatient. I understood that he really thought that he needed my help to take it out of the freezer. I was like, "No, no, you got it." And he was like, "Ugh," because it was a little heavy, but it was also cold, right? So from a sensory standpoint, see, the freezer is here. If you're looking at the show with us on video, the freezer's here, he's here, and I'm here. He's looking at me like, eh, like, dude. And I'm like, no, you got it, you got it. Just
Yeah.
and he finally gets it out, and he's like, and he's holding it with his fingertips because it's freezing cold. But then
Uh,
when he put it in the car, I'm like, see, you did that, you got it. And he's like,
yeah.
yeah, I did. All right. So you just never know,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I mean, it, I'm always amazed by some of the very similar behaviors. Up, up. I'm back. You okay?
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So, like I said, I'm always cracking up by the similarities. Is Isaac, if he wants something, for example, he's got a massive video collection. So we put
Mm.
a bunch of them in boxes in the garage because he can't even keep them all in his room. Um, and if he gets a bug, he will go tear that garage apart. I mean, moving boxes and furniture and everything to get at these boxes. But then, hey, bud, help me bring a bag of groceries. Heavy, heavy. It's like,
Oh my gosh. You have no idea what that does for me, because right now he's going through a thing where if we go to the store, because there's things he'll pick out that he wants. He's
mhm,
got a thing with brochures now of,
mhm,
and I mean, for any and every kind. You go into the grocery store, he goes to the fish counter, the butcher, and gets the recipe stuff. Not that he's going to cook any of this stuff, but he'll get
mhm,
any and everything that he can.
mhm,
Job applications, he'll go to the bank in there, you go to the banking window, whatever.
mhm,
And if let's say we're coming from school, if he's got his backpack, I'll tell him, well, put those things in your backpack. Then there's less things to carry. And he'll be like, I do not want, I don't, he'll tell you what he doesn't want to do. Like
mhm,
he's Sam I am in green eggs and ham. I do not want to do that. I will not. I do not want to do that. I'm like,
mhm,
all right. So then
mhm,
when you get out of the car, especially if you've gotten a bunch of items, he loves picking out the items and putting stuff in the cart and going down the grocery list and everything. But when you get home, he almost runs out like his underwear are on fire and gets to the front door like nope, 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 like he's, and then he won't come back down to help me. I'm like, you know what, we're not making the stops if you're not helping me carry those things in, man. I'm not
yeah,
working for you, dude.
yeah, yeah.
So I can
So
relate to
yeah,
that.
yeah. That's Isaac. He all of a sudden he doesn't have the strength for the things you ask him to do, but man, he can move furniture to get at what he wants. It's a crack up. But anyway,
So
so
that's what he
I think,
says. He says heavy.
oh yeah, he'll go, or he just makes like an irritated sound, like he doesn't really want to, right? Or he brings a
Yeah,
bag in, and then I have to tell him we're not done. Go back outside because I got my one bag. I'm good. It's like, no.
right.
So, but we all do that, right? There are things we want to do and things we don't want to do, and if we can slide out and not have to do it, then we slide out. And we don't do it. So not that that's wildly unusual behavior. It's just there. He's not so slick at it. Like my
Yeah,
other kids, I come home with a big thing of groceries, and unless I call them down, they didn't realize I got home with the groceries, right? So yeah, he's no different, but it's just he's a little less slick about it. I guess that's the way I put
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Going back to differentiating men and women,
yeah. Oh,
dads and
okay.
moms, and the purpose again for the group, because
Mm,
I want to eventually talk about the group some because I want people to know about that.
mhm.
Um, and I think the way the group operates is
The den? Is
it,
that what you mean
it,
by the group?
yeah, our
Okay.
group, yeah, the
Yeah.
den. I
Okay.
think it,
All
I
right.
think it epitomizes the need for it because
Mhm,
we've got twice as many members as we do attendees on calls. And
mhm,
when I created it, the whole idea was to let people know that it's for adults, so nobody's going to be like, "Hey, where are you? Why did you get on the call?"
mhm,
It's for them to know that it's there. If they show up, they do. If they don't, they don't.
mhm.
But there's more members than they are regular
Attendees. Yeah.
attendees on the
Absolutely.
calls.
Right.
So tell me, if you will, what do you think are some of the fears from your perspective that we as men um, have, or things that we're not comfortable talking about?
Well, most of us default into needing to have the answers for whatever. Our wife
Hmm.
expresses frustration. We automatically into how do we fix that? And it's like it's not about fixing, right? So that whole strength, capability, proficiency, efficiency, all those kinds of things are supposed to be, or we have the you should be on us about those kind of things. And then when it comes to you know um, working with a neurodivergent child, the should be's and gotta be's go away because you just don't have control over that. So
Hmm.
I think men are a lot less comfortable in that space, so we avoid it. We don't want to appear to not have answers or be incompetent, or even not, be not appear not caring. Because I know for myself, things just don't occur to me that occur for my wife. My brain doesn't work like hers does, and so I'm often caught like, "Oh, I didn't even think about that," and that's an uncomfortable space for me because sometimes there's shame, like, "Oh, I should have thought about that. Why did I not see that?" And I think we get in these spaces, and they are safe spaces. So let me convince any man who's on here, you will not feel judged in any way, shape, or form if you join the den, because it's not about that. We all come stumbling into the room like, I need oxygen because I'm not getting this right. I don't think I'm getting this right. I just want to know I'm not alone. And that for me has been a huge part of why I'm a regular attendee at the den, because I just need that breath of oxygen. I need that encouragement that some of the behaviors I am frustrated with about my son, Sean as well, and some of the other guys have experienced the exact same thing. So it's not me, it's not my son, it's just a reality in a parental relationship um, with your kids, whether they be neurotypical or neurodivergent. Um, and the other thing I love about the den is that I get reminded that this is typical behavior for my son's age, because a lot of times we who are caregivers who have special needs kids think this behavior is tied just to their diagnosis, and
Hmm.
we forget, no, that's what my other kid did at that age, and it's like, oh yeah, that's right. So I I do understand the resistance, because it does require a level of vulnerability, and that's just not something we're taught as boys. And then young adults and young men, we're not taught that vulnerability is okay and even
Yeah,
valuable. So men really struggle to place themselves in those environments. I think that's
yeah,
what I've seen, because I've been
yeah. It's
involved in
funny.
other men's groups as well. Same thing.
Hmm. And it's funny because I was thinking. Just last night, I was thinking about my relationship with my dad, which is fantastic. Um, and I think we talked about on the previous episode where we talked about what does it mean to be a man. I was saying that my dad is the son of, from everything that I remember or that I've been told, because I don't have any memory of my paternal um, grandfather. I was very young when he passed away, but from everything I was told, he was a man's man. Um, he was independently successful. Him and my grandmother. He not only did he not finish high school, he never made it to high school, but that didn't change the fact that he impacted people's lives with businesses and contributions to the local community in the Virgin Islands many, many times over. Some of which you've seen.
Hmm.
Um, but I will say that while my dad was not the most, touchy feely, he was affectionate in terms of roughhousing and things like that, but I have never once, I am 61 years old, I have never seen my father cry. And he told me that when his father passed away, he didn't cry. And he's never able to tell me, like, why, you know? So, in terms of vulnerability and what you pass on, I'll ask a question and I'll answer it and then let you do it. And the question is, do you tell your sons, it's okay to cry, it's okay to show emotions, or do you show them? And for me, Elijah's my only biological child. As you know, my wife and I, Laura and I, adopted my sister in law's four children, two boys and two girls. And then Laura has her two daughters from her previous marriage.
Hmm.
And I've never had a conversation with them about the boys. Like, look, it's okay to cry. Nor have I said, this is how you treat a woman should you be lucky enough to find someone to spend the rest of your life with.
Hmm.
I've made jokes here and there and said something like, hey, if your wife is happy, you're happy. Things along that line. But
Hmm.
I show more than I tell. And then I wonder with Elijah, how much of that example does he get? For instance, when we're out and about, he will rush to the door entering someplace. He doesn't know to stop and maybe let somebody go first. And I said, you go ahead and let them go first, especially if it's a lady. Always let a lady go first. I don't know how much of that he gets. So how much of that have you shown to Isaac or Jeremy who's neurotypical, because he would be able to get what you tell him? Do you tell them, show them? Where does any of that come in? You're
I'm a
you're
crybaby. I'm
chuckling.
a crybaby. They see me cry a million times. you know,
Yeah.
when so I think I model that emotional vulnerability, and that I have
Hmm.
for forever. Um, Sentimental movies will get me going.
Yeah.
When people have passed in our family. So it's again, I didn't receive that when I was a kid.
Hmm.
My dad was quite disconnected, and so as a part of that vow, and maybe even the pendulum swings too far sometimes, right? I didn't get much from my dad over here, so I'm going to swing way over there and compensate for it.
Yeah.
So there was a real commitment in me to be vulnerable with all of my kids, my daughters and my sons. Um, and I just, for some reason, I really wasn't worried about that not coming off as coming off as not masculine.
Yeah.
I mean, my kids see me do everything. They see me work a lot. They see me, doing the physical stuff. They see me in the gym. So I just felt it was important for me to model for them wholeness. Now, I'm not close to great. I mean, I still got issues on a regular basis.
Don't we all? Yeah.
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 Um, and but I've really tried to be blunt and honest with them about the things I struggle with, the things I'm proud of, the
Hmm.
the bents that I have that might not have been great for them when they were little kids, and I've encouraged them as adults. You can come to me anytime and share your hurts, share where you think I did something wrong,
Hmm.
and I will listen and I will own it if I had a part in it, uh, because I want that closeness with them, and I don't think I got it even close to perfect. So I just don't want them to feel uncomfortable. Like I don't want to bring them something that's uncomfortable for dad or mom, and we've both been about that for forever. Just realizing
Yeah.
how flawed we are, and how that may have impacted our kids, and the
Hmm.
fact that we might not even have a perception of how that could have negatively impacted them,
Right,
and invited them to come and have those conversations with us at any time. So
right, right, right.
I don't
Right.
remember what your question was. I don't know if I got off on a weird tangent. What was your question again? I don't even
I don't.
remember.
First of all, you must remember and don't ever forget that the city of Tangentville is
Mm,
one of which I am mayor. So it's okay, right?
okay.
So who am I to judge? But it was all connected, and because I
Mhm,
am the mayor of Tangentville,
mhm,
it's very often that I will see a connection between
mhm,
things anyway.
mhm.
Um, in an attempt to be as broad as possible, because we always want to raise our consciousness and think
Right.
about other people's shoes and perspectives. You and I have had conversations about um, the reality of what it means to be uh, a black man in America, and right now that carries a little more weight, relevance, and
Mm,
all of those things than ever before.
mhm,
And so those are things that we'll explore as time goes on.
mhm,
And I'd like to kind of dive into that. And I will say what you and I shared, which is, you know, as a black man in America, have never had I've had one encounter with police where I was pulled over for a questionable reason.
mm,
Um,
mhm,
the officer wasn't rude, but there wasn't any real obvious reason to pull me and my friend over.
mhm,
Um, we were in we were in a BMW, and he pulled us over, and when we asked him why after he came back, because he didn't give us a ticket, he said that the reason why was because my friend it was my friend's car. He had a pine cone in the window, in the rearview mirror.
air
The one of the
freshener.
not pine cone, air freshener. Yeah, the air
Right.
freshener, the pine tree air freshener.
Right.
Now, because if that's the case, you pull somebody over and you come over to the car, you tell them that, and tell them you should probably take it down, or else you get a ticket. And,
Mm,
none of that came up. It only came up in response to the question, so we had to ask to be told that. Other
mm,
than that,
mm,
I haven't had, I don't think, any negative interaction with police at all.
mm,
Yet I am aware, as a black man in America, that that could change at any given time. And I think that people, you know, um, sometimes have a chip on their shoulder, or they're naive as to what it is that's taking place. And I had a conversation once with someone that had a podcast that was geared towards the experience as a parent to a child with autism
mm,
from a black perspective. And I remember thinking, I'm not sure how different that might be. And that's
mhm,
based on my experience. And they told me that they lived in Florida. And right away I went, oh, okay. And it was at a time when Elijah he might have been a teenager, but he wasn't going anywhere on his own. So he wasn't going to get pulled over. Nothing like that happened. Then
right.
I started thinking about, even with race moved from the equation, when an officer encounters one on the spectrum with disabilities, if they're not familiar with it, they don't necessarily know how to handle that.
Mhm,
But then you add to that situation not just color, but a young man of color,
mhm,
then that could go in a whole bunch of different ways.
mhm,
And so my experience is sort of the same thing, in that I don't know what kind of experience I've had with regard to being a caregiver or Elijah's autism that is specific to being black
mhm,
in America,
mhm.
but I'm also well aware that that could change on any given day. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and because of that, vigilance and awareness is high, and or awareness needs to be high. And then that just goes back to, again, being more curious than judgmental. We need to be, aware of other people's situations, all the
Yeah.
time.
It's a concern. I mean, it's a legitimate concern. We were talking earlier. I didn't recall, but there was an incident in my life when I was a young black man. I'm an old black man now, but when I was a black man, and actually, a neighbor kept parking her car in front of my driveway, so I couldn't back out of my garage and driveway.
Like blocking the driveway.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, blocking it.
Who does
So
that?
people are rude. They
Yeah.
just, in their mind, it makes sense somehow, right? So, after kind of repeatedly asking over some time, could you not do that? We called the cops, right? And so the police came. And she was out there, and what I tell you is the officer came right to me like I was the problem, like we had called the police, right? And so he was automatically in my face about because young white girl, young black man, who's the problem here, right? And so it was an interaction where after kind of really getting some aggressive attention pointed at me, it's like, look, we called you, this is my garage and driveway. She keeps parking and blocking it. How am I the problem? And and in the midst of that, I'll be honest, I spit because I have, not at him. I was just spitting on the ground because I had some congestion. And he goes, I can write a ticket for you for that, for expectorating in public. And I'm like, whoa. So it was clear to me when he jumped out the car who was in the wrong here, before he even understood the situation. So I hadn't thought about that in a long time, but yes. So
I'm trying to resist the urge to go down the rabbit hole because it's a little off topic, but curiosity is literally eating my skin. Uh,
what's the
which is
question?
which is like, what did he say when he got out? Because it's your driveway. It's not like he got out and thought that you were blocking hers. What did he say?
I can't remember the details. It's just too long ago. I have Swiss cheese memory, but um, I luckily my wife, then my girlfriend, was there, and she was able to kind of stop him and say, look, we called you because this is our garage and driveway, and she keeps blocking it with her car, so the problem is her, not Maurice. And like I said, in the midst of that, I had some congestion. I turned and I spit, and he jumped out like, I can give you a ticket for that. And it was like, okay. you know so like, look, you need to understand what the deal is here. We called you. She didn't
Yeah,
call you. We called you because she's the
yeah.
problem. And then finally, he de-escalated from there, and then explained to her why she can't block the driveway, and we went on our business. But that was after it got really aggressive.
Wow.
So I translate that to my son now, and he doesn't have the ability to express himself, and that really scares me because if he
Yes.
gets in a stressful situation, he might start stimming, he might start yelling because he doesn't quite know what's going on, and that is
Hmm.
a scary place for me. That if they don't understand that he has a disability, and they perceive him as being aggressive, then where's it going to go from there? So there is some, I think, legitimate concern, fear, about that kind of a situation. And like we said, there are videos that kind of show that, where officers have misunderstood that a person is neurodivergent, and
Hmm.
taken it to a level of aggression that was not called for. And so that is a concern I have,
Yeah.
legitimately, I think.
Yeah. I'd say that's probably my biggest one. Um, and you have to try and grow and evolve and
Hmm.
always be working on yourself. I used to, until about a month ago, I would never let him walk off in a store, like
Hmm.
away from me,
Hmm.
or away from us.
Hmm.
Now I don't mind it if I can see him.
Hmm. Hmm.
If I can't, I, I'm not good with that because I don't know. I'm less worried about him than I am about the people he's going to
Yeah.
um,
Incur.
interact with,
Yeah.
and
Correct.
it's funny again going back to the whole thing with police. I've never had a dangerous experience, but I know that could change at any moment. The same is true of him and people, and this is kind of where it makes me feel that it whenever I have a doubt as to whether or not there's more to life than this that we know, and that there's more than uh, that there's any lack of a supreme being around us or that's responsible for us being here, I'll
Hmm.
stop and think about in his 19 years, whenever he interacts with people and initiates it, there have been two or maybe three negative experiences. And the negativity is usually because what he'll usually do is he'll want to meet people, but he does so in a very aggressive manner and he doesn't introduce himself. He used to go, who your first name, middle name, and last name? I'd be like, stop pointing and ask them, you know,
Hmm.
what you say is, "Hello, my name is," and he'll just be like, "Elijah, what's yours?" Like he just wants to get past his part and get to them.
Hmm.
And usually, especially if they have a name tag on and he says the name, people like the sound of their name, they're warm to it and everything. But I used to really, really struggle with it when they'd be like, uh, I can't answer you. I just like, what do you want? And I'd be like, he's trying to meet you. He's trying to be, you know, like you soulless devil. What is wrong with you? You know, that is that's usually my thought. There was a couple of weeks ago, there was a lady in the grocery store when that happened. She was checking us out at the register, and he asked her her name. She was like, "Forgive me, I don't know. Nobody, no ethnicity is offended by this, but she had like an Eastern European accent of some kind. She was like, why he want to know my name? Why do you need my name? What is my name to you?" And I was like, he's trying to meet you. Be glad he's giving you the time of day. And when you finish, go to Costco, go to the heart section and buy a big box. Get three. You know. So it's a tough balance. I
Yeah.
just couldn't understand why that was like a real problem. But I also had one instance where we were in Target, and as he was trying to introduce himself to this guy, I could tell he was clearly on the spectrum. I didn't ask him, but
Hmm.
as he was asking the guy's like, I have to focus on the register. I have customers. I can't talk to you. I can't give you my name. And I didn't think he was being rude at all.
Hmm.
I felt like he was almost afraid that he might mess up the order or not give the customer or the client the attention that they needed.
Hmm.
And he told me he was on the spectrum without me asking by his response when I said to him, "It's okay. My son is just introducing himself to you because he's on the autism spectrum.
Hmm.
That's one of the things that he does in the manner in which he communicates." And the way he said, "Oh," you know,
Hmm.
he seemed relieved. Now I had one
Hmm.
instance where that took place, and I explained it to the person, and their response was, "Really? I am too." You
Interesting.
know, and yeah, one time because what he'll do, I think we talked about this. He's Whenever you go out to any retail place, he has to use the bathroom. He
Hmm.
will biologically use the bathroom, usually a one and never a two.
Hmm.
But I don't know if he stores it up or what, but we'll go to one place. If we go to two stores, he's going to go to the bathroom at every single store,
Right.
right?
Right.
And he can tell you the brand and how many flushes per gallon, and he'll wash his hands and do the whole 9 yards, and needs to use hand sanitizer in every public place that there is.
Hmm.
And so we had to go to one of those restrooms in the store that had a code. So for some reason, I found myself explaining to the guy that, oh, you know what it was? In this particular store, it was an Amazon Fresh. And in that store, I guess maybe to make sure they have control of things, they don't give the code out. What
Right.
they'll do is they'll come to the door and punch it in.
Oh.
And for
Oh.
Elijah, that was like, whoa, hold on, wait a minute, man. I'm the one that pushes the buttons. And it's like Elijah will do it. I'm like, no, you can't. He can't
Right.
give you the code. And he was like, he couldn't figure out why.
Right.
But he was okay with it eventually. When he went in, he's using the bathroom, and I'm explaining to the guy why the code is so important to him. To the average person, all that matters is they get to go in and use the bathroom.
Hmm.
When I told the guy why the code is important,
Hmm.
he goes, "Oh, really? I'm on the spectrum too. I totally get it. I used to be the same way." And we have this whole conversation. What I really wanted to get into with him was how he transitioned into work, because we talked about going from being the architect
Hmm.
to then transitioning to just the observer or consultant. Well, architecture and consultant continue to meld and blur for our kids
Hmm.
because we don't know what level of independence they're going to have, to then go into, which we'll cover on another episode, which I will, from both the emotional and financial piece,
Hmm.
but planning for emotionally and financially that time when we exist in memory only.
Yeah.
But one of those things that allows them to thrive is what kind of work they might be able to do. And I wanted to ask him about that. Those are things that we'll touch on um, also in, in future episodes. But um, I don't know. You said something the other day where you were talking about it being this wonderful, scary, just any and every adjective you can think of in terms of the ride. And just much like anything else, going back to the whole Einstein thing of solving a problem at the level of consciousness at which it occurs, The same is true really of life. We're so busy living it, we don't really stop and think about where we are, what we do. And when you think about it, it's kind of, it really is amazing on so many different levels.
Mhm.
And I think one of the questions that's worth asking is, let me ask you this, and I'll let you go first because I don't know the answer. We talked before about if there was a cure for autism, a button you push or a pill, would you give it to your child? And we talked about, you know, what you would gain in terms of verbal communication and everything, but there's this fear of how much of them would you lose. So let me ask you, where do you think you would be or what life would be like without autism? And have you thought of that?
Of course, I've thought about it. There are dreams that we all hold for our kids, right? And they can manifest it whatever way that works out. But careers and marriages and hopefully grandkids and all those things that
Mm-hmm.
that I think are just what we all hope for our kids, that they have a good life, right? And uh, and define that in neurotypical terms, right? But I think in one of the on the last episode, for me, I talked about some of the things I think I would lose with that, because very fortunately, Isaac is a very affectionate child, young
Same
man,
here.
and he gives me
Yeah.
hugs and kisses every day, right? And that is, and there's just a closeness. He, like we hook arms and walk through the store. We're close to each other. Where
Mm-hmm.
my 25-year-old son, oh God forbid, never do that. He's
Yeah.
barely acknowledges that he with me in the store, right? Um, so there are those things that would get lost, right? Where
I'm
Isaac's happy
gonna
to be my
I'm
sidekick.
gonna
You want to
tell
be
him you said that.
That's all right. It's true. Where Isaac, hey, you want to be my sidekick and go do errands? Yes. Any of my other kids, nah, I'm good, right? So all of that would get lost, and that would be a sad thing. Um, and I'd say for me, um, even looking at the American dream, to me, it's just rife with lies
Mm-hmm.
and stress and pushing people into a lifestyle that's not really even good for their souls or their spirits. So I am very grateful for where I am. I don't think I would push that button. Um, I would push that button for him, not for me. If I thought that was going to give him a more fulfilling life, but not for me, because it would make my life easier. Because I think I'm in the life I'm meant to be in, and we've taken the steps of therapies and that we can to try and bring him to the fullest expression of who he can be, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm good with that. And if that means
Yeah.
he's under my care for the rest of his life, that's okay. If at some point in time he gains enough capability to be independent, that's okay too. So I guess that's the short response. Um, Unfortunately, I got a hard stop, bro. Um,
Yeah.
so
That's it.
yeah.
Um, you know, with everyone, to everyone within the sound of my voice, thank you so very much. You can go ahead and make sure that you use the link for Billy Footwear to get your discount. And we will see you on the next episode. Thank you so very much. Remain childlike and less childish. Thank you for joining us on Beyond the Spectrum.